Half Size Me bonus episode from Sabotage to Success with Charlene. Hello, beautiful listeners. Today, we're going to be continuing our series from Sabotage to Success. This interview with Charlene was amazing. Charlene was awesome because she really is somebody who has pushed away from group environments and didn't plan to share or even get involved, which totally caught me off guard because that was not how she showed up. She showed up as very engaged and raising her hand and asking questions. So it's so interesting how we can have a perception of ourselves, but then other people see us completely different. So in this interview, you're going to get to hear how Charlene kind of changed her perspectives on impulse eating, food, how it impacted her relationship with her husband, a lot of great stuff. And again, I cannot say this enough. If you said, hey, Heather, can you fix one thing for me that's going to change my life, like really change it? It's actually not losing the weight. It's really changing your mind. It's understanding the mind. I say this all the time. We were given instruction manuals for a microwave. We have instruction manuals for a car. We have instruction manuals for a washing machine. But no one stopped and said, oh, by the way, here, this most powerful computer that lives inside your cranium 24/7, you're just going to have to figure it out as you go. And there's no instruction manual. And you're just going to think all thoughts are equally valuable. And you're just going to be jumping from thing to thing to thing because you're going to be wildly confused as to why your mind is saying contradictory information. No one talks to you about this. We say, oh no, a penny for your thoughts and pay attention to your thoughts and what are you thinking? As if all thoughts are valid, as if all thoughts really, really are important and should be laser beam focused on. And that's what's gotten us into trouble. We think the mind that tells us that we've had a rough day to eat the chocolate is actually helping us. It's not. It's not. That's not its intention. It just wants you to feel better right now. It doesn't care that tomorrow morning you're going to beat yourself up for it and you're going to be online looking for the next thing to do to lose this weight quick, or should I go on a GLP-1 medication, or should I do this, or should I do that? It doesn't care because then it'll come back in and validate those too. It literally wants you not to feel discomfort in the moment. If you know this is the thing you need help with, you're in luck. As of today, August 18th, From Sabotage to Success is available to everybody. For the first week, it was only available to Academy members. It is now available to anyone and everyone. So if you would like to sign up, and if it's available, you'll see a place to check out and reserve your seat. If it's not available, we are collecting names and email addresses for the next go. I keep these very small because these groups very small because I want to make sure you get your questions answered. I make sure that you get a chance to communicate with all the people that are involved and feel like it's an intimate environment to hear what they have to say and be able to build some relationships too. So anyway, before we go to Charlene's interview, if you want to sign up, or if it's full by the time you hear this, but you want to be notified for the very next run of this, you would want to go to halfsizeme.com/success. SUCCESS. You have a great week, and I'll be back with another From Sabotage to Success interview next week. All right, lovely listeners. Today we have Miss Charlene on the line with us. She was one of our lovely members who was part of the Sabotage for Success 6-week intensive. And she has been very kind to come on today and share with us kind of what her experience was. So Charlene, first thing I would love for you to do, take a minute, say hi to everybody, and then maybe take us back to prior to you signing up, what made you interested in the 6-week intensive? What was going on in your life at the time that maybe made that feel like it would be helpful for you?
Hi, everyone. So before the 6 weeks intensive, like I am 50 years old, 51 years old, and I've struggled with my weight my whole life. And I've had some yo-yo dieting experience. I think that's many people have.
Mm-hmm.
And I've come to learn I've come to understand and really been working on the mental aspect of it over the last few years. I would say, especially post-pandemic was my most recent weight regain. And just understanding that it's like the mental aspect of it is the part that matters the most, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise you're not it hasn't been sustainable for me. So understanding, for me at least, the mental aspect was the part that mattered the most. And then hearing on the podcast, I had seen some of your videos of the Thinking Leads to Eating series.
Mm-hmm.
And then hearing on the podcast that you were doing specifically a 6-week course on the mind aspect of it was immediately like, yeah, I need to check that out.
Yeah. So up until that point, since you did listen to the Thinking Leads to Eating series and all that, because asking people to take time out to think about this and invest in it, often you have to really see that there's a problem to begin with, right? So
Yeah.
after listening to the Thinking Leads to Eating series and really kind of looking at your own personal history and your talkative mind, just like we all have a talkative mind, what was like kind of some reoccurring problems that you kept running into that you were hoping to get help with?
That's a really good question. So for me, I think part of the problem was understanding that I get attached to that inner voice very quickly, of
Mhm.
like that voice becomes the perspective, not that voice is a perspective, right?
Mm.
So understanding that I have a tendency probably to defer to the lower brain, like as a default setting of like, one of the first things you teach in the course is like, you're not the voice. You actually have separation from those aspects or that aspect of yourself.
Mhm.
So I knew that I needed to work on that specifically. And then the other thing was, and you talked about this, I think, in one of the Thinking Leads to Eating videos of like, well, what is there to do then? Like we want the thing to do. And I have been chasing the thing to do, kind of knowing that probably there's nothing to do. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So I was like, okay, I need to come into, I want to learn about those things specifically, about like, how can I get some separation from this voice? Like
Mhm.
what can I do about it? I think was the thing. I was like, Heather will have the answer and I will know what to do.
Right.
And you
Okay.
did. And you know what I mean? And it was really helpful. But the answer is you don't have to do anything.
But what's awesome, the thing well, so there's so many things I loved about having you specifically in the intensive. One of them was at the very end, you were like, "Hey, this is not me. I don't normally sign up for things like
Oh
this.
no.
I'm
Yeah.
not someone who would raise my hand and talk to people I don't know."
That's it. And to come on this podcast, you know what I mean? Where I was
Yes.
like, I said to my husband, like, I should do it. No, I shouldn't do it. No, I'm not going to do it. I'm definitely not. And he was like, and he's always very like, just try things, right? So he was like, how
Yeah.
about we just be courageous, right? And he's like, you had a
Yes.
good experience and there's no harm in sharing that experience with other people so that they, you know what I mean? They might be interested. They might need the same help. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it for sure. But absolutely, like one of my objectives when I signed up was like, initially I had that thought of like, I'm just going to sit back, arms crossed, not put my hand up, like just let the experience come to me. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I was like, no, you know what? I really want to get out of my comfort zone a little bit and make the most of this opportunity to really learn from somebody who's just further down the road. And that's the other thing that was really helpful was from the outset, you framed it as, listen, I'm still learning this.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be you're now, this is like the start of a journey for you. This isn't the end of anything. So it was like, oh yeah, okay, so I don't have to, it took away that pressure to have it all figured out by the end of the 6 weeks. You know what I mean? Where it was like, okay, yeah, this is going to be like, Heather's still learning this.
Yeah.
She's further down the road, but it's a journey. It's going to be like a probably lifelong learning experience for me. So that really helped to take the pressure out of like, I have 6 weeks to get this exactly right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's why in the orientation, I don't know if you remember that or not, I came on and I said, "The whole time you're here, your mind's gonna always say you haven't done
Yes.
enough, you haven't
Yeah.
completed enough." Because I know what all minds do, and they all do the same thing, right? And that's
Yes.
even why I set up the HSM Academy the way I do, where I come on and I say, "Hey, just only take 10 minutes a day," because I know the impetus is, "Oh my gosh, I gotta take it all in right now." It's like as if there's a fire and you're trying to
That's
put it
it.
out. Yeah. And so, okay, so what I hear in this is the thing that was motivating you is you knew there was a problem. You knew this voice that talked to you, it was super easy for you to identify with it. You felt like you were smushed up against it. And in the course of the 6 weeks, what became clearer to you about the voice and maybe like its role in repetitive habits for you? What did you see for yourself?
So So one of the early lessons, which I love that there was a whole like curriculum in the program and it was broken up by weeks because I was like, how is she going to try to teach this? Like this is a
Yeah.
monstrous thing. But one of the early lessons talked about that habit loop. And that's something that I had identified as a problem for me even before I took the course of like, I would be like triggered, not understanding that it was necessarily a lower brain, but I would be triggered by something and food was always the answer. Like eating was always the solution. Do you know what I mean? And it's like really the only problem that gets solved by eating is hunger, but like I'm using it like on everything.
Right.
So having that early lesson to say like, one, you're not the voice, like you can observe that, but you don't have to, you're not the participant, you're the observer. And then two, to identify like, what are your habit loops around the voice? Like, and to recognize like, oh yeah, I do just almost without thinking, like there is a decision point. That's the thing, is the voice is very good at smoothing over that decision point. It's like, oh, you feel bad, you have a snack, you feel like there's not a decision point in there, but there is. And it's giving yourself that time, that little bit of like mental space to be like, oh no, like I feel bad. The lower brain is suggesting a snack is the solution, but like, how has that ever worked? Like I've tried that now, a few thousand times, probably just this year alone. Like, you know what I mean? Like this is no longer maybe the only thing that I can look to. So I think those early lessons were really helpful for me.
100%. And one thing, and I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, but one of the first times you raised your hand and shared, it was about this impulsivity to want to eat something, right? Like I think it was
Yeah,
ice cream, if memory serves, but it was
it
like,
was. Yeah.
I want to eat ice cream. I've made this decision. The thought showed up, I want to eat ice cream. And then you shared it with your husband and he said something. And right away you were like feeling a little bit rebellious about that, right? Like, okay, feeling like there was maybe this policing going on. But you and I, as we dissected it, started seeing it from a different perspective where we realized that it was like that impulse to have the ice cream was never on your daily plan, right? And the way that you went about sharing it wasn't you being confident in yourself. It was more like kind of saying it in a way that he maybe said something and it didn't register right with you. As you look back at that now, do you think that maybe this issue wasn't even just affecting your eating, but also affecting some of your relationships too?
Oh, for sure. It was affecting my relationships, especially with my husband. And then also to say, um, to just pick up on something that you said a minute ago, where you said, because I know how all minds work, I know how the mind works, I know how all minds work, is that was one of the remarkable things, and I'll come back to my husband in a second, but that was one of the remarkable things about the group, was it's like, these are 18, 20 women that I don't know at all, I've never met before, I wasn't really in the community prior to this, and yet we're in these group sessions, we're in the coaching sessions, we're in the group together, we're going through these lessons together, and we're all finding out like all of our lower brains are doing the same things, responding the same way, making the same suggestions. It's like, well, wait a minute. Like, are we all tapped into some consciousness? Like, no, we're all doing these same things together. So for sure, it was a situation where you helped me recognize like, oh, my lower brain wants to outsource responsibility for my decisions. And so there's two parts to it. There's the impulsivity, and then there's the saying, like, now I'm doing it to be rebellious. Like now it creates like, it's part of the habit loop almost. And it was in my relationship where it was like, deflecting responsibility onto my husband for my impulsiveness, right? Which is entirely my responsibility. So it's been really helpful with that. And it's been really helpful in other relationships where you start to be less reactive overall, because the lower brain isn't just in your relationship with food and exercise, it's in your life. You know what I mean? It's in every relationship. So suddenly being able to be less reactive, at work, or less reactive with friends, or less impulsive in those situations has also been really helpful.
100%. So let's say this, if you were to give a real world example of how you used to respond to that urge to have ice cream and how that would have played out versus now how you handle it, kind of like juxtaposition, how would that look?
100%. So the example in question, right, where it was a beautiful sunny summer day, and I said, apropos of nothing, like, why don't we go get ice cream? Let's get ice cream. And my husband says, well, we didn't, where's this ice cream come from? You know what I mean? We didn't really have it. And he's like, and he doesn't like sweets. So he's like, I don't want to. Like, I don't want to get in the car and go drive because we don't have ice cream at home, et cetera, et cetera. And then that it's almost enough to trigger a fight. It's almost enough to trigger like, well, you never want me to have ice cream. You never want me to do fun things. You know what I mean? You're the one who's ruining my life.
Right.
Right. That's really fair. That's really, mature. So then just a couple weeks ago, so since taking the course, but even I think toward the end of the course, there was a situation where I was like, it might have been ice cream again. It is summer. I can't remember, but I said kind of again impulsively, like, hey, I think I want to go get X, you know what I mean? Like for a treat food. And he's like, okay. He's like, but is it in your plan?
Yes.
Because now he knows, like, you know what I mean? We've had those conversations without fighting. And so he was like, is it in your plan? And I'm like, oh, yeah, no.
Yeah.
And that was just the end of it. And then it's accepting like that you can be disappointed and like the lower brain's not going to like that, but you can tolerate that. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. And if memory serves, there were several times like where you were driving somewhere, maybe you were driving home, and there was like this urge to have cookies. Cause this is the cool thing about you not sitting back and crossing your arms and just letting it come to you, because you kept raising your hand like week after week and saying, hey, this situation actually happened to me. And I know what you could see it in hindsight. A lot of times you're like, okay, this played out. I could see that was my lower brain. I can identify what it was saying to me, but I didn't know what to do instead. Like that seemed to be kind of a reoccurring theme, right? Like, but what do I do instead? And so with the cookie thing, can you maybe give us some insight on how you were handling that urge initially? And then once you got a better handle on it, how you start handling that differently?
Yeah, so I have a reoccurring appointment that takes place near a bakery. That's all you need to know. That right there sets up the picture.
Right.
And the habit was to go to the appointment and go to the bakery afterwards for little treat culture. But the problem was like it was becoming like a thing where I felt like I didn't have control over the little treat. It was like, oh, the little treat was automatic. It wasn't a decision. Again, coming back to like there's a decision point there, whether you're willing to acknowledge it. So I had pre-decided to like, I'm going to go to this appointment. I'm not getting the cookie afterward. That's not happening. Not today. So I went to the appointment, didn't go get the cookie afterwards, and picked my husband up and drove him home. And as we were driving home in the car, I started explaining to him, like I had the appointment and I usually go get a cookie, but I didn't go get a cookie this time. And like, I'm a little bit disappointed that I didn't go get a cookie, but it's normal to feel, I think anybody would feel disappointed if they thought they would make it and they didn't get a cookie. And it's fine that I didn't get a cookie. And there's always the chance that I can decide next time to get the cookie. And he's hearing me talk like through this. And he says to me, you don't have to convince me. And I'm like, I'm not trying to convince you. I'm trying to convince myself. I need to hear it out loud. And that's the other thing that's been really helpful. And one of the things you talked about in the course was like, the voice that can speak this stuff out loud is very logical. Like it brings an element of objectivity to it that you don't feel when you're just having that argument inside your own head. Do you know what I mean?
Right. 100%.
But it's like, oh, so what you're telling me is that as a grown-ass woman, I have to get a cookie after every appointment at this location? Like, I don't think so. I think I have autonomy. You know what I mean? So it's also, again, that separation of reminding yourself that you have that agency and that you're distinct from the voice. So, really, really helpful.
Yeah. And if memory serves, then maybe this is not true. But it seemed like maybe you didn't love going to this appointment. And that's how come that treat afterwards was like a reinforcer, like, okay, I'm not loving going to this appointment. And we even, I think, identified at some point that maybe putting something else in there that would be comforting for you could be. Is that right? Or am I remembering that wrong?
Yeah. So that was a separate, that was when I had actually a mammogram booked.
That's it.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then it was like, oh, I'm going to comfort myself with food. Do you know what I mean? Which is something that again, hindsight, we talked about it after the fact where I raised my hand and said like, I did comfort myself with food in that instance, but like, there has to be a better way. Like there's obviously, with 2020 hindsight, but then you helped me really sort of talk through like, oh, okay, so food is what you've gone to. And then what else could you do? What else could you have done? Like, sometimes it just takes somebody like talking it through with someone or having a little bit of objectivity. And of course, at that time, like we were 3 weeks into the lesson. So having already learned that the voice is not me, learned those things, it's easier to sort of step back from any situation and say, oh yeah, you're right. I could have made other plans that would have been as comforting or more, because then I don't also carry the guilt of like, oh, and then I ate something and I ate off plan. And like, there's really that it feels like the lower brain suggestions don't come at a cost. When
Yeah.
when the lower brain is suggesting, those things feel free in the
Mhm.
moment. It's like, oh yeah, get a cookie, get the comfort food, do the thing. But then there's always that cost afterwards of like, that wasn't the plan. That's not what I wanted to do. That's not, and that was a really important lesson too for me, was like the lower brain does not think long term.
Mhm.
So like your long term goals are not its priority whatsoever. It wants you to feel better right now.
Right after the mammogram. It doesn't care
Yeah.
what's gonna go
Yeah.
on 7 days later when you don't like what's going on the scale, right? Like, it's
That's
never
it.
thinking. One thing you do really well with this, you keep saying, "Okay, I'm not the voice, that's not my thoughts." Like, you're really getting that, which is awesome. But I could hear somebody listening to this that hasn't gone through that and maybe has not done the assignment that we did where we kind of prove to ourselves that we don't control our thoughts. And before you did that lesson that involved like the pebble and like writing down your next 20 consecutive thoughts that you're going to have, did you really believe that all the thoughts that went through your head were being manifested by you? Or was that something you kind of already had known and this just reinforced it? Like how did that
Yeah,
show up?
so that was something that I actually was already working on,
Yes.
because I was talking to my therapist about some of these like sort of behavioral acceptance and commitment therapy and living in more in line with my values, which I felt often like that conflict of like
Hmm.
doing what the lower brain says, but like my values are not instant gratification. My values are not, immediate relief of the slightest discomfort, but like there I am in those situations over and over again. So I was
Hmm.
working on it, I think, a little bit. And then, of course, reading some of the books that you'd recommended already in the community and things like that. And some of the videos like Thinking Leads to Eating series. So I was already kind of aware of the
Hmm.
concepts. But that was funny because my lower brain kind of tried to turn on me in the course like quite a few times of like, well, then you don't need to do this exercise, right? Like you
Yes.
already know, and I was like, no, but let's just try it, right? Like, let's just do the exercise. And then to be shocked of like how hard the exercises were, it was like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe I did need to do that. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Oh, no, that was one of the things that really sold me on all this. Somebody, I forget who I was, one of my many teachers I was to, they said, "Look, if you really could control your thoughts, don't you think you would have nothing but good ones? Like, if you really had the ability to, you think about it, we say we don't wanna feel sad, we say we don't wanna feel angry, we say we don't wanna feel jealous or contempt or any of these bad things, right? Then why do we keep having thoughts and hyper focusing on things that make us feel that way? If that's what we like, what you just said, being out of alignment with your values, right? If that's what we say we value and what we want more of, then why in the world do these negative thoughts show up? And why do we have these visuals in our head of terrible things happening if we are completely in control? And that was like, oh, good point. Because yeah, I would only pick the best things to put on
Right? Yeah.
repeat. And I'm like, yeah, where are they coming from? Right. And sometimes we get really caught up on that question. But the reality is just being able to keep yourself separate from it can keep you a lot happier and a lot saner, in my opinion.
It's separate from it, but also one of the a key lesson toward the end of the
Yeah.
program was that you can have all the unhelpful thoughts in the world, but you can still take the actions that align with your values. You can still
Yeah.
do the things that you said you were going to do. You can still write out a food plan and follow it. You can still log your food, and at the end of the day, whatever your commitment to yourself is, you can still take those actions regardless of the lower brain saying like all the things that the lower brain's going to say about it. Um,
Well, I was going to ask a question about that. So when I think about our time together, a lot of the struggle, in particular with food, that I think I saw you had, and I think this came out around your workouts too, right? Like Monday through Friday, you saw that things were
yeah,
different,
yeah.
and you were kind of wanting yourself to be the weekend version of Charlene, Monday through Friday. So
Yeah.
what I'm curious, it seemed like there would have been a lot of stopping and starting for you, or like maybe you go strong at periods, but you dwindle off. And then definitely with your eating, right? There seemed to be a lot of impulsivity around eating. So how does those things look different now? Like your commitment to your workouts, your following through on your journaling, and your eating. Like how have they been impacted by learning what you've learned so far?
Um, well, I'll be honest, there's still a lot of work to do.
Mhm.
But I will say one of the things that has been really helpful is to just be it's made me more forgiving of myself
Mm-hmm.
and less, the all or nothing thinking. It just leads to nothing. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So this mindfulness, the Sabotage to Success course really helped me in the sense of it it goes back to I don't have to be doing it perfectly because what I'm doing still counts. Do you know what I mean? So I
Mm-hmm.
think one of the questions I had raised was like, oh, I normally would exercise, 5, 6 days a week, and now I'm not doing that. And I want to get back to doing that because that was like the best way or the ideal way to do it. And you were like, okay, but you're not there now. You know what I mean? Like where like sort of start where you are versus start with like the most idealized version of yourself and then beat yourself up for not achieving that. Do you know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
that's been super helpful. Where now if I miss a workout, if I make a mistake, previously those would have been like catastrophic. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you
Yeah.
missed the workout. There's no point working out the rest of this week because, like, if I missed a workout on Tuesday, for example, I'd be like, oh, there's no point working out this week because now I've thrown off the whole pattern of all the things and whatever. And then I would miss 4 or 5 days of workouts, which is just goofy when you say it out loud.
Yes.
Um, so being able to say like, oh, okay, so I missed the workout on the Tuesday. Well, I have 30 minutes on a Wednesday. I'm going to do as much as I can on the Wednesday. And
Yes.
even I think on one of the days where we had the session, where in the morning I was kind of dawdling and I was like, well, I don't really have time. And then I hopped on the spin bike for 25 minutes because it was like so I think it helped me because I had perhaps unrecognized, but a real perfectionist streak tied to that lower brain being
Mm-hmm.
almost abusive. Do you know what I mean? Almost like, well, you didn't do it perfectly, so you shouldn't even try. And it's like, no, I should try, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So I think that's been the biggest change for me in terms of like day to day since the course is like now my like mistakes are just mistakes. They're not indictments of my character. They're not, you're never going to be successful at this. You're never like none of like I just dismiss all of that. That's not true.
No, and I love that. And one thing that just made me think of that. So as each week would progress, you would raise your hand and have one of these examples, right? First, it was the ice cream, then it was the cookies on the way to the appointment, then it was the thing after the mammogram. And since the course has ended, have any other situations crept in where maybe in the past, before you understood this, you would have just been like, oh man, I just have no willpower. I'm failing at this. But now you might view it differently and say, interesting, if I were to redo this situation again, maybe I need to do this, or this differently. Like, do you see your mistakes differently now and maybe find solutions versus just shutting down?
Yeah, so I would say that's one of the things that's been really helpful is
Mhm.
having a little bit, just even that little bit of separation. So
Mhm.
now I still have those repetitive thoughts. I still have those thought loops of like, this is impossible. You're never going to like all of the negative things. I don't even want to reiterate them because I don't want people listening to this to have those in
Yes.
their heads. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like, but we've all had, if
Right.
you come in the course, you'll talk to 20 other women and we all have those same thoughts.
Mhm. 100%.
When those thoughts come up, I don't have to dance with them. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yes.
like one of the early examples you gave was like if you're standing in a river and the thoughts are leaves that are floating by, you don't have to pick up every leaf. You know what I
Yes.
mean? You don't have to engage every thought. So it's
Mhm.
been much easier for me to like have those thoughts come because they get triggered by whatever and I don't have to pick them up. I don't have to like examine them. I don't have to make them my identity. Like I can just say, oh, there it is again. You know,
Mhm.
that's great.
Absolutely. So in the past, you would have definitely
Oh,
maybe made a mistake,
definitely.
grabbed the leaves, stared at the leaves, been
Oh,
like,
yeah,
"Why did I
for
do this?"
sure.
Yeah.
And
Now it's
then I was making the lower brain because it was affecting my relationships, for example, with my husband. So then I was making the lower brain, like I was making it mean things about my relationship with other people. I was
Mhm.
making it mean things about like who I am as a person. Like, no, like none of that's true. I don't have to pick that up. I don't have to engage with it. And it's easy to forget. It's easy to like slide back into that habit of like, oh, I failed again. And now this means something. It's like, no, but no.
No, that's awesome. And
Yeah.
so I'm so glad you brought up that it was helpful for you to be in a group with other people working on this exact same thing, and that's one of the reasons I did wanna have, like, 20-ish people in there because I think as a coach, I'm talking to 20 something people in a week about all of this stuff all the time, but it's in isolation. And
Yeah.
so I get to hear from Sally about this one problem that I see Margaret over here having. And, so I get to see the universal nature of the mind, but most people don't get to do that. And so for you in the situation, had that not been a part of the element, had it just been me and you, do you think it would have lacked being as seeming truthful to you because you wouldn't have had other people saying the exact same thing? Like, was that part of what really helped this click for you?
100%, because like I said, I had seen the Thinking Leads to Eating series.
Mhm.
So, and it's funny because you say in one of those, you say, "You're gonna hear me say this, and you're gonna think it doesn't apply to you."
Yeah.
Right? You know? So I
Yep.
came into this thinking like, "Well, we'll just see." Like, we'll just see, but having the experience of like, and I think if you talk to all 20 of us, we would say the same thing, where it was like to see another woman explaining a situation, explaining her
Mhm.
lower brain's reaction and be like, "Oh, like mine does the same thing, hers does the same thing." So these are more universal responses, and that was really helpful, and I don't think I would have necessarily believed it because like I said, I've seen you say it in the Thinking Leads to Eating series, but then
Mhm.
to be in that group with women who are and it was across all different range of challenges. Again, this isn't something that just affected my relationship with food and exercise, but it's affected my relationships as a whole and my relationship with myself.
Mhm.
And you see other women saying the same thing of like, oh, I had this situation come up at work and lower brain was saying this. And it was like, okay, well, first of all, my lower brain would say the exact same thing. But
Mhm.
then second of all, to see it has so much broader application than food and exercise, which is you think you're coming in for the food and exercise portion, and it has been extremely helpful. But then it also just affects other things. Like if you're willing to apply these concepts, it makes a huge difference.
Oh, 100%. And so one of the things I just want to ask, because I've heard this pretty much from several people that were in it, they said, I was going to sign up and then I talked myself out of it because I'm like, I've already heard Heather say all this stuff. And,
Yeah,
she's not going to teach me anything I don't already know. I just need to do it. That's kind of
yeah,
the thing.
yeah.
And then I priced it at a point where I knew the people who signed up would feel committed to showing up and being a participant, hopefully for the full 6 weeks. And I know that from coaching, if I were to say charge $30 for it, most people will sign up, they'll never do anything with it. So I wanted to make sure people actually participated and got value out of it. So did you feel like for the price and the time commitment, the 6 weeks, that you got your money's worth? Do you feel like it was helpful and something that you like when your mind was talking to you at the beginning? How did you push past those thoughts and sign up anyway?
So for me, it was the signing up part wasn't as challenging in that sense because I had the previous experience of knowing this was something that I particularly need to work on.
Hmm.
That like this has been for me, and having that it was expensive. Like I was like, okay, well, but that was part of it turned out to be a positive thing for me because then it was like, okay, well, if you're going to go in and do this, you're going to actually participate. Like you're
Yeah.
going to put your hand up and you're going to speak in front of other people and you're going to, be vulnerable like that.
Hmm.
So that was really helpful. And then in terms of like where for me, I think it was well worth the cost. I think it was a really valuable experience. And it's also really positioned me well to just keep going. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Where I don't feel like and my lower brain that like as soon as the course wrapped, I think I put a post in the
Yeah.
group, but like the day the course wrapped, my lower brain was like, great, like dust your
Yeah.
hands. We're
Teacher's
finished
gone.
here. Right. Yeah. Teacher's gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
The week you went on vacation, my lower brain was like, there, we're left unsupervised. Like we can
Yeah.
go back. So it was really great in that it positioned me to like keep learning and you give so many resources and so many different ways to access the information. And that's actually a key thing that I wanted to say as well was some of the teachers and some of the lessons, it was like, oh, that doesn't resonate with me at all. And I have mixed feelings about that because some of them I feel like I'm going to go back and watch it again because
Mhm.
like maybe I didn't get something. And then some of the ones where it lands, like it just lands.
Lands, yep.
You know what
Mhm,
I mean? And it was like,
mhm.
oh, okay. Like, so it was such a good mix of teachers. Like because having that experience of like some of them not hitting the mark and some of them really hitting, it made me realize like this is hitting differently for everybody.
Yep.
So having that mix of teachers, I think was really helpful to be able to say like, okay, these are ones I'm going to continue to follow up on. And then even the ones where I was like, oh, that's not right. Like that. No, like, you know what I mean? Just rejecting it. It's like, now I recognize like, oh, I should probably go watch that again. There
Yeah.
might be something there for me. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I so love that your spidey sense picked up on that, because that's exactly how I handled it for myself. I would hear a teacher and it would resonate enough to get me past the next hurdle. And then the people I outwardly rejected, I might not come back to him for 2 years, and all of a sudden I heard it differently, and I'm like, "Oh, I get it now." Like, but initially my mind just wanted to reject what they were saying whole, because like I couldn't accept it at that time. And that's why I told you guys on the last meeting, this is just the beginning for you guys. It's kind of like the curtain's been lifted and you're seeing a different, slightly different reality than what you've seen before, but there's various curtains along the path that just keep getting lifted. And that's the thing you really want to understand. But some people may never get even to this point. Like they just always believe the voice in their head. They just do the things, they stay stuck in habit loops. But then you at some point might recognize that this just doesn't seem right. I remember having this thought, and I don't know if you ever had this. How can I wake up in the morning so sure what I want for myself, but then some point in the day I do something so counterproductive to it, kind of like you and your values, right? Like, how can I be both people at the same time? I can't be. It's that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing. I can't be both people. So who am I really? And that question kind of prompted me to keep looking further into this, because it just didn't make any sense to me. Is that kind of how it sat for you too?
Yeah, and the question of who am I really? It's like, what action can I take right now that most resembles the person that I most want to be? Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it's been really helpful to have that separation of, am I really that self-destructive, immediate instant gratification voice? Like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And objectively, there's plenty of evidence that I'm capable of doing and achieving long-term goals. You know what I mean? So it's been really helpful to have more objectivity and these are things. It's funny because I saw something the other day that said, like, nobody teaches you adulting. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So this is one of the things where I was like, this is so helpful just in terms of adulting, of like having a little bit more objectivity, a little bit more self-awareness. Um, yeah, I would say it's, for me, it's made a huge difference and just positioned me well, I think, to continue with this.
Oh, I love that. Well, I really loved the fact you were part of the group. And honestly, I thought you were it's so funny how our perceptions of people are different than their perceptions. Like you came in right away, hand was up, questions being asked. I thought, "Oh, she's got to be one of those A+ students who when she's in the classroom, she's always at the front raising her hand." And it wasn't until later in the class you're like, "Oh yeah, that's not me. That's not how I perceived me," right?
Right.
But what's kind of cool in this example, who are you really? Because you had a story of who Charlene was, right? She's the kind of
Yeah.
person who crosses her hands. She doesn't say anything. She just observes. But then when you decided to pay money for something and show up and actually get your hands dirty, you became this other person who, if you had asked me at the time, what kind of person do you think she is? I'd say, oh, she's probably been like really helps her teacher. She comes up at the front of the room. She's the quick first to answer a question. That's how I perceived you. And see, that's what I find so fascinating is the story we have of ourselves is often not the reality. And I think it was really refreshing to hear that from you.
It helps having that recognition of like, yeah, these are stories that I'm telling myself.
Yeah.
And the other thing was, I would say, if anybody's hesitating because they're concerned about it being a group, that was my biggest hesitation,
Mhm.
where I was like, I'm not going to go emote in front of strangers. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to do that. But then knowing that this was something I needed to work on, and decided to take the risk. And not only was it an amazing experience, but like there was so much compassion and so much empathy from women in that group. And then we really started to recognize, like, across, the spectrum of experiences, that we all have similar lower brain chatter, that we're all having those similar experiences. So in that sense, it was also really helpful. It was really reinforcing of like, this isn't a me problem. Like,
Yeah.
this is a, you know what I mean? This is like, this is so much more than that. So like, don't, for me, I wouldn't hesitate to, and I'm not a group person.
We're still going with the story. She's not a group person, people.
It was an amazing group. It was an amazing group, and it was an amazing opportunity. I'm really glad I did it.
Well, thank you so much, Charlene. You were awesome through the whole thing. And you gave us some really good, what I loved about your stuff in particular was you'd be like, here's the scenario. help me think about this differently. What tactics can I actually do differently? It was great because a lot of stuff you brought up gave real world application for how to not only recognize the voice and identify, but then also to start to be more thoughtful about what you needed and to start making better plans and to start taking different actions. And so yours was a good bridge that I think helped a lot of people take things that can just stay up in our head and make it into practical applications.
Yeah, and that was important for me because I have a tendency to intellectualize all of this and to
Yeah.
be, to have it all figured out in my head, but then the application is like lacking. Do you know what I mean? So to have the opportunity to say like, okay, I understand this as a concept.
Mhm.
I'm not the voice, but the voice comes out of that appointment. The voice goes into a mammogram and says, yeah, a cookie would make this better. And I get a cookie. So like, how do I
Yeah.
think that was a key part of it, was having the ability to get coaching and to put up my hand and say like, okay, well, I get it theoretically.
Yeah.
And like I said, I get very cerebral, very intellectual, very like, I have figured out the math on calorie tracking, but like, okay, but then I go to do my tracker and the lower brain says this is pointless. And I put the thing down and walk away. So
Mhm.
how do I act? How do I take different actions? And to have a coach like you to be able to go back and forth with on that and be like, well, what is really the problem? What really can you do differently? And even the situation with my husband where like immediately you put your finger on it and you were like, no, this isn't about him. This is about you being impulsive with food, because that whole situation happened internal to me before any of it was vocalized.
Mhm.
Um, which like, I don't think anybody had ever, and I mean this in the nice way, but like, I don't think anybody had ever called me out on it before.
Yeah, no. That's the job of being a coach, is like as nice and tactfully as I humanly can, is to point out how most people are kind of lying and deceiving themselves. But because I can see that that's really what's holding you back, right? And so the more that you see it and you're aware of it, and that's often most people have no idea. They're like I said, they think that voice is them. They think everything is logical that they're doing until they go, oh, yeah, I didn't think about it like that. And then all of a sudden things start to change, right?
For sure. You think it's real, but it's not real.
100%. Oh, I have really enjoyed talking to you today. Thank you so much, Charlene. I know this was out of your story wheelhouse, but you came on and you did amazing. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to visit halfsizeme.com. Check back often for your daily dose of inspiration, because you are worth it.
The information you hear on this podcast is for informational purposes only. The host is not a medical professional. You should always consult with your doctor, nurse, or other certified health professional before beginning any diet or fitness program.